It was a rainy Monday morning when my 9-year-old son, Oliver, found the note. I was barely awake, still tangled in the remnants of sleep, when I heard his soft voice calling out to me, "Mom, what's this?" He sounded unsure, almost afraid. I blinked my eyes open, struggling to get my bearings in the dark early morning. I rubbed my eyes and saw him standing by the kitchen counter, his small hands shaking slightly as he held a piece of paper out to me. I took it from him, the weight of it feeling heavier than a mere note. I could tell something wasn't right by the way his fingers trembled. I unfolded it slowly, scanning the short message that sent a sharp, cold jolt through me. "We're going on a trip. Move out by the time we return." There was no love, no explanation, just a harsh directive, written as if it were nothing more than a simple, routine task. My heart stopped for a moment, and I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to keep my composure in front of Oliver. I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to say something. "It's okay, buddy," I said, my voice unsteady despite my best efforts. "I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it." But the words felt hollow as soon as I spoke them. My stomach tightened. I wanted to reassure him, to make him believe that everything would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know if everything would be okay. Oliver was staring up at me now, his lip trembling. "But why, Mom? What did we do?" His voice was small, confused, as he clutched at the note like it was the only thing that could keep him grounded. It broke me to see him like that. I wanted to say something that would make all of this make sense, to explain to him that we hadn't done anything wrong. But the words wouldn't come. I hugged him tight, trying to hold myself together long enough for him to feel safe, even if I didn't. "This isn't your fault, Ollie," I whispered, my voice wavering. "It's just life sometimes. You don't have to worry about it. We're going to figure it out." I kissed the top of his head and sent him off to his room to get dressed, hoping that some normalcy would help. But the pit in my stomach refused to ease. I walked through the house, every sound amplified in the stillness. There was no familiar clinking of breakfast dishes, no chatter about the day ahead. The house felt empty, almost ghost-like. I went to the front door, expecting to see my parents' car parked out front, maybe the suitcase they had talked about packing for weeks. But the driveway was empty. The car was gone. The hooks by the door were bare, no jackets, no signs of life. It was as if they'd vanished. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mom's number without thinking. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, voicemail, and then I called my dad, voicemail. I did it a third time, still hoping against hope that someone would pick up. No luck. It was like they had completely erased themselves from our lives in one swift, callous action. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for them to come to me. I called my sister, Anna. It rang twice before she answered, sounding annoyingly alert for someone who had likely been asleep until 5 minutes ago. "Yeah?" she answered, her voice thick with indifference. "Anna, where are Mom and Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. But I could feel my anger starting to rise. I wasn't ready for this, not at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, not on Christmas week. She sighed like I was asking an obvious question. "You saw the note, huh?" Her voice was detached, almost bored. "We all decided." "We all decided?" I repeated, feeling my anger bubble up. "We all decided for me too?" She chuckled, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "Yeah, you should have figured it out by now, Ava. You're 34. You can't keep living with them like this." The words cut through me. I was 34. I was a grown woman, but I didn't feel like I'd ever truly grown up in their eyes. I had always been the helper, the one who carried the weight of everyone else's decisions. But this felt like the final blow, and it had come on a holiday morning, when I should have been with my son, feeling loved and at peace. I gripped the phone tighter, trying not to let my voice crack. "You're seriously doing this right now?" She didn't even seem fazed. "It's for the best," Anna continued, her tone condescending. "They want to take a break, and you can start over. Move out. You've been depending on them for too long." I stood there, frozen, my world slowly crumbling around me. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice steady as I could. "This is Christmas, Anna. Christmas," I repeated, though the words felt heavy, pointless, like they couldn't hold any weight against what was happening. I couldn't understand how this had become a conversation. How my parents, the people who were supposed to be the foundation of our lives, could leave like this without a care in the world. It was like they had forgotten we even mattered. Anna let out a dismissive sigh, clearly irritated that I was making a scene. That's exactly why, Ava. Christmas is the perfect time. We need space, and you need to move on. We've been helping you. It's time for you to help yourself. She said it with such finality, like it was a lesson I should have learned years ago. But I wasn't sure what she meant. Help myself? By kicking me and my son out during a holiday? It didn't make any sense. I struggled to catch my breath, to keep myself from spiraling into panic. Where are they? I asked again, trying to hold on to the only thing that made sense. Where were they? Had they really just left? Anna's voice dropped a little, the tone sharper now. They're in Mexico, Ava. I thought you knew. Mexico. That word felt like a slap. Mexico. My parents were in Mexico, living their dream vacation while their daughter and grandson were left behind with nothing but a note. I felt a wave of betrayal so deep it felt like it was swallowing me whole. My whole life, I had tried to understand them, to forgive them, to make it work. But this was beyond anything I could explain away. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say. This was the moment where everything fell into place, where I realized that no matter how hard I tried, how much I sacrificed, how much I bent over backwards for them, it was never going to be enough. This wasn't about me. It wasn't even about Oliver. It was about them, about their convenience, about their need to be free of the responsibilities that came with having family. Can I talk to Mom? I asked, my voice soft, fragile, like I wasn't sure I had any right to ask. Anna groaned in the background, clearly annoyed by my request, but she put the phone down anyway. I could hear murmuring, muffled voices, and then the phone clicked. My mom's voice came through, bright, overly so, as though she had been waiting for me to call, like everything was normal. Hi, Ava? Everything okay? I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. I was still trying to piece together the reality of what was happening. I finally managed to ask, barely above a whisper, "Is this real?" My mom didn't miss a beat. Well, of course it is, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We've been planning this for months. You've had plenty of time to figure it out. I felt my chest tighten. You really just left? No warning? No explanation? Well, we did warn you, she said, her tone sharp, like I was the one being unreasonable. You're an adult, Ava. It's time to stop relying on us. We want to go on vacation, and it's the perfect time for you to get your own place. Move forward. You're ready. I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. And what about Oliver? He's your grandson. You don't think this affects him? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. You don't think this affects me? My voice was low, but it carried the weight of all the years I had spent trying to make my parents proud, trying to meet their expectations. But this was beyond me. This was beyond anything I could have prepared for. She sighed, her patience wearing thin. He'll get over it. He's a big boy now. I felt the words like a slap. Big boy. As if Oliver wasn't a little boy with emotions, with feelings that mattered. As if they didn't owe him more than this, more than a cold note and a forced goodbye. Is that your final answer? I asked quietly, my voice barely audible, as if the question could somehow change everything. Of course, she replied quickly. We're helping you by making sure you can stand on your own. Stop being dramatic. The call ended as abruptly as it began. She hung up. No goodbye, no consideration. Just a cold finality that left me breathless. I stood there for a moment, my phone still pressed to my ear. It was like the world had dropped out from under me, and I was floating in nothingness. How had everything changed so quickly? I dropped the phone onto the table and walked back into the kitchen. Oliver was still sitting on the floor, his little hands trembling as he tried to eat a piece of toast. His face was streaked with tears, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. He didn't understand why his grandparents, the people who were supposed to love him unconditionally, had just disappeared without a word. Mom, are we going to be okay? He whispered, his voice breaking. I knelt down beside him, my heart breaking all over again. Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be okay, I promised, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. But I had to believe it for him. I had to believe it for both of us. I kissed his forehead and stood up, my mind already racing. I couldn't wait around for their approval, for their permission. I had to take control. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number for a moving company. I didn't care what it took. I wasn't staying in that house, not anymore. It was time to go. It was time to rebuild, just me and Oliver. "We're going to start fresh," I said softly to him. "Just us." Oliver's face lit up with a hesitant smile. "Just us?" "Just us," I confirmed, knowing that this was the first step, and it was a step I was ready to take. The next few days felt like a blur, a whirlwind of decisions and emotions that seemed to spin faster than I could keep up. The moment I made the call to the moving company, something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to wait for my parents to come back and demand answers that they weren't going to give me. I wasn't going to sit in a house that had never truly felt like mine. I had to take action. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Oliver, too. By that afternoon, we had a place. It wasn't big, but it was perfect, modest, comfortable, and most importantly, it was ours. I had made sure of that. The landlord was kind enough to look past the usual bureaucratic hurdles and let us move in right away. I had the paperwork sorted quickly, the keys in hand, and everything was set. I didn't waste time. I packed up the little things we had in the house, things that mattered to me and Oliver, and the rest was just stuff. It didn't matter. We didn't need it. I remember the day we moved in, how simple it was, yet how monumental it felt. Oliver was excited, a little nervous, but mostly happy. He couldn't stop asking me about the new place. "Do you think I'll like it, Mom?" he asked, his voice full of the hope that only a child could have. I smiled at him, pulling him into a hug as we walked through the front door. "You're going to love it, Ollie," I said, even though I wasn't completely sure. But I had to believe it for him. This is our home now. No one is going to make you feel like you don't belong. I watched him look around the small living room, his eyes wide as he tried to take it all in. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a few rooms, a couple of windows, a kitchen that wasn't as spacious as I would have liked, but it would do. And more importantly, it would be a place where Oliver didn't have to feel like he was in the way, where he didn't have to worry about his worth or whether or not he was good enough for people who should have loved him unconditionally. For the first time in a long while, I felt a small sense of relief. I had done something that was entirely mine. No one could take this away from us. The first night in our new home, Oliver fell asleep on the couch with his stuffed bear tucked under his arm. I sat beside him, watching his soft breathing, the way his little chest rose and fell. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I wasn't constantly bracing for the next disaster. This was real. It was a fresh start. Over the next week, we made the place ours. I unpacked boxes, cleaned corners, hung up a few pictures. I even went to the store and bought a small, mismatched couch. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. It was something we had chosen, something that felt like a piece of our new life. I didn't tell Oliver everything that had happened. Not yet. He didn't need to know the full story. He didn't need to carry the weight of my family's actions. But when he asked why we couldn't visit Grandma and Grandpa, I just told him that we were going to be okay without them. That sometimes grown-ups made decisions that didn't make sense, but we were strong enough to handle it. He didn't ask any more questions after that. I stopped taking my parents' calls. I didn't check my messages or respond to anything. I knew I wasn't going to get an apology, not from them. They didn't have the capacity for that. They didn't understand the consequences of their actions, and I wasn't going to beg for their love or their approval anymore. Not after everything. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in the new living room, the afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the space. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a dream home. But it was a home, and in that moment, as I looked at Oliver sitting on the floor, coloring in his book, I realized that I had done it. I had given us both a chance to start over. I didn't need their validation to feel like I was worth something. The phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Ava, it's Mom." My mother's voice sounded small on the other end, strained, like she was still holding on to the last bit of control. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to, but I had nothing left to give her. "I've been thinking," she said. Maybe we could talk." I could hear the hesitation in her voice. I took a breath, my heart steady in my chest for the first time in a long while. "No," I said simply. "We don't need to talk." I waited for her to say something else, to try and twist the conversation into something that would make it all better. But she didn't. There was silence. Then, quietly, she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to chase after that silence. I wasn't going to beg for a love that wasn't there. And as I turned back to look at Oliver, who had finished coloring and was now playing with his bear, I knew something I hadn't known before. We were okay. We were finally okay. A few weeks passed, and the weight of my parents' absence started to feel more like a distant echo rather than a raw, open wound. I stopped checking my phone as frequently, stopped anticipating a message that would never come. I didn't know if my mother was still in Mexico or if they had returned home. I didn't care. I had finally gotten to the point where I realized that I didn't need them to feel whole. I didn't need their approval to breathe or move forward. But then, one morning, as I was sitting in the new living room, Oliver playing with his Legos on the floor beside me, my phone rang again. I hesitated for a moment before I picked it up. It was an unknown number. I didn't recognize the area code, but I answered anyway. Part of me expected it to be my mom, some last-ditch attempt to call me back into the fold. "Ava, it's me." "Mom," my mother's voice came through, much quieter than it had ever sounded before, almost unsure. "I need to talk to you." I felt a brief rush of anger, the familiar resentment bubbling up inside of me. But I held it in, knowing that reacting in the way I always had would only fuel the fire. I wanted to ask her why it had taken her so long to reach out, why it had taken her this long to see how broken she had left us. But instead, I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my voice calm, though I could feel the tightness in my chest. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, as if she were trying to gather her thoughts, trying to find the right words. I don't know how to start this, Ava, but I need you to know, we didn't mean for things to go the way they did." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to hold on to the calm that had settled in my chest in the weeks since I'd left. "No, Mom. You didn't mean for things to go the way they did? You really think that's the issue? You didn't mean for me and Oliver to feel like we were nothing more than an afterthought? You didn't mean to tear us apart?" Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear the guilt in her breath, the way her words stuttered as if she were realizing the gravity of everything that had happened. "Look," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm not going to pretend this didn't hurt. It did. A lot. But what I need you to understand is that I can't keep doing this, Mom. I can't keep pretending like everything's fine when you and Dad are using me as a stepping stone to make your lives easier." There was another long silence before my mother spoke again. "Ava?" Her voice cracked, but she quickly regained control. "I know we made mistakes. I can't change that. But I'm asking you, please, don't cut us off. Don't cut me off. I'm your mother." Her words hit harder than I expected. The rush of emotion that flooded over me nearly knocked the wind out of me. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, not by a long shot, but it was something. And it made my heart ache, even though it wasn't the full acknowledgement I had needed. "I'm not cutting you off, Mom," I said quietly, the edge in my voice softening just a little. "I'm just protecting myself and Oliver now. We've spent too long trying to fit into a mold that wasn't ours, and I can't do that anymore. I have to look out for us first." I paused for a moment, and when I spoke again, my voice was steadier. "You can't just show up, Mom, and expect everything to go back to normal. You left us. And I'm not going to just forget that." I heard her sigh deeply, her voice thick with something that sounded like regret. "I know, Ava, I do. But I need you to understand, I never meant for it to get this far. I never meant to hurt you or Oliver." The words hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. I wasn't sure if she truly understood or if she was just saying the right things because she thought that was what I wanted to hear. But I didn't have the energy to argue. I had already moved on from that part of my life. The apology felt half-hearted, but I was done seeking closure from them. "I'm done talking about this, Mom," I said finally, my voice quiet. "We're fine now. Just know that. We're okay. Oliver and I are okay. And that's all that matters." I could hear my mom's breath catch. There was something almost broken in her tone when she spoke next. I I understand, Ava. I do. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I know, I replied softly. I'll be okay. I ended the call without waiting for her response. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was just that I had to protect myself from the cycle. I had to protect Oliver from it too. And I realized something in that moment. That call, that apology, it wasn't for me anymore. It wasn't going to fix anything. What mattered now was that we had a chance to rebuild. We were stronger than we had been, and I wasn't going to let anything tear us down again. As I set the phone down, I turned to Oliver, who was sitting quietly, looking up at me with those big brown eyes that seemed to understand more than I gave him credit for. He smiled softly at me, his little hands holding a new drawing he had made, a picture of the two of us in our new home. "Mom, are we still okay?" he asked, his voice small. I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "We're better than okay, Ollie. We're finally free." And for the first time in years, I believed it. It's funny, the way life has a way of showing you just how far you've come when you least expect it. Not in grand moments or bursts of achievement, but in quiet, everyday moments when the weight you've been carrying starts to lift. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon, almost 2 months after I'd moved into the new place with Oliver. We'd settled into a routine by then, our mornings filled with the normal chaos of getting ready for school and work. Our evenings spent with dinner, homework, and the occasional movie on the couch. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was peaceful, and that was enough for us. It was the first week of February when I ran into my mom again. Not on the phone, not through texts, but face to face. It happened unexpectedly. I was picking up a few things from the local grocery store when I turned down the aisle for produce, and there she was, standing just a few feet away, frozen in place as if she hadn't expected to see me either. For a moment, we just stared at each other. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, just one full of unspoken words. She looked different. Not just older, though that was part of it. There was something about her that seemed worn down, like she had been carrying something heavy for far longer than she ever let on. Maybe it was the weight of regret or guilt or whatever else had been eating at her. I wasn't sure, but it was there, floating between us, in the way her eyes darted to the ground and then back to mine. "Ava," she finally said, her voice unsure, almost like she wasn't sure if I would even speak to her. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel in that moment. Part of me wanted to scream, to let her know how much damage she'd done, how much she'd hurt me and Oliver with her indifference, her coldness. But another part of me, the part that had been learning how to move forward, how to protect myself and my son, knew that this wasn't the time for that. I cleared my throat, pushing past the wave of emotion that wanted to overwhelm me. "Mom," I replied quietly, my voice firm. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about what happened." Her eyes flickered, and she seemed to brace herself before continuing. "I wanted to apologize again. I know I hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it. But I miss you, Ava. I miss you and Oliver." The words hung in the air, and for a split second, I almost felt myself falter. The ache in my chest stirred, the part of me that wanted to forgive, wanted to believe her, wanted to go back to a time when things were simpler. But I couldn't forget. I couldn't pretend that things hadn't changed, that I hadn't been through months of emotional exhaustion because of her actions. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, my voice controlled. "But I don't think you understand yet. It's not just about saying sorry, Mom. You can't just apologize and expect everything to be okay again." Her face fell slightly, her shoulders slumping as she took in my words. "I know," she whispered, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "I'm trying, Ava. I'm really trying to make things right. I don't want to be the reason you and Oliver are hurting." I could feel myself softening, but I couldn't let myself go back to that place. Not yet. Not when the wounds were still so fresh. "I'm not asking for you to fix everything, Mom," I said, taking a deep breath. "I just need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. And Oliver? He's not the same either. We've moved on. We've made a life for ourselves. And that's the life we're going to keep building." Her eyes glistened, and I could see her holding back tears. For a brief moment, I thought she might reach for me, might try to wrap me in the kind of hug that used to make everything feel okay. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded, looking like she was accepting the truth for the first time. I get it, she said, her voice soft but steady. I won't force anything. I hope that someday we can have a relationship again. Maybe not like it was, but something better, something real. I didn't know how to respond to that, and I wasn't sure I wanted to yet. But I also knew that, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I had worked hard to get to this point, to be okay with where I was, with what I had built. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her love. But I could acknowledge that I wasn't the only one who had been hurt. I don't know what the future looks like, Mom, I said, my voice low but firm, but I know I'm not going back to where I was. I'm not going to let anyone drag me down again. She didn't respond to that, but she didn't need to. I could see the understanding in her eyes. This wasn't about forgiveness in the way we used to think about it. This was about accepting where we were now. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of their choices on my shoulders. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The past was still there, lingering between us, but the present was clearer now, and I could feel, deep down, that I had made the right choice, the choice to let go, the choice to move on. Take care of yourself, Ava, my mom finally said, her voice quiet but sincere, and tell Oliver I'm sorry too. I will, I said, offering a small nod. Goodbye, Mom. And just like that, we parted ways. As I walked down the aisle, I felt a small weight lift off my chest. It wasn't the closure I had expected, but it was enough. When I got home, I found Oliver sitting on the couch, flipping through a book. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with curiosity. Mom, what happened? I smiled softly, sitting beside him. Nothing, buddy, I said. Nothing at all. And that was the truth. Nothing had to happen. We were already okay. Life continued to unfold in its usual rhythm after that conversation with my mom, but something had shifted inside me. I wasn't sure what exactly it was, but I felt lighter. The weight of my parents' absence, which had once felt like a burden I would never escape, didn't feel so heavy anymore. I was learning, slowly but surely, that there was peace and detachment. I didn't need their approval, their love, or their validation to feel whole. I had Oliver. I had our new home. And for the first time in a long time, I had my own sense of direction. The days passed, and as winter turned to spring, the days felt a little longer, a little brighter. We were settling into our new life. Oliver was thriving in his school, making new friends, and for the first time, I noticed that he was becoming more confident. He wasn't looking over his shoulder every time someone spoke to him. He wasn't waiting for permission to take up space, and that filled me with more pride than I thought possible. This was what I had fought for. This was why I had walked away. But even in the midst of this new beginning, there were still moments when the old pain surfaced. When I was sitting at the kitchen table, paying bills and sorting through paperwork, and my phone buzzed. It was a text from Anna. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since that day at the grocery store. I'd been avoiding contact, not because I was angry with her, but because I knew that anything more than a surface-level conversation would bring up everything I was trying to leave behind. I don't know if you're still mad, but Mom's really sick. She's in the hospital. Thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a moment, my thumb hovering over the reply button. A part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted to respond with something sharp, something that would let Anna know that I wasn't about to fall back into the cycle of family drama, that I wasn't ready to open up that door again. But another part of me, one that I didn't want to admit existed, wondered what my mom was going through, wondered if the guilt had finally caught up with her. I sighed, set my phone down, and stood up. I needed a moment. I walked to the window, staring out into the gray evening, trying to gather my thoughts. I had a lot of unresolved feelings about my family, and I wasn't sure I was ready to confront them. But in that moment, I realized something I hadn't truly let myself consider before. It wasn't about me anymore. I had let go of the need to be part of their world, but that didn't mean I was free from caring, from being human. I went back to my phone, fingers shaking just slightly as I typed my response. I'll come. The drive to the hospital the next morning felt surreal. It was as if I had somehow disconnected from the life I had been living these past few months and stepped back into a world that felt foreign, distant. When I arrived at the hospital, Anna was waiting for me in the lobby. She didn't look surprised to see me, but there was something different about the way she held herself. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by something fragile, something raw. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly, looking up at me with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. She really wants to see you." I didn't say anything right away. I didn't know what to say. I had come, but I still didn't know what this was going to be. A reconciliation? A final goodbye? Maybe it was just a moment of closure, something that would let me close this chapter of my life for good. I followed Anna down the sterile, quiet hallways, the sterile scent of antiseptic and hospital food filling the air. The hospital room felt small, dimly lit, and in a way I realized this was the first time I had ever truly seen my mom as a person, not as the figure who had shaped my life with harsh rules and silent expectations. She was lying in the bed, looking smaller than I remembered. Her face was pale, her hair thin and wispy, and there were tubes connected to her. She looked fragile, vulnerable in a way I had never seen her before. She looked like a person, not a parent. For a moment, I stood at the door, unsure if I should enter. But then she saw me, and her eyes softened, just a little. "Ava," she whispered, her voice weak but sincere. "I'm sorry." I walked into the room, standing beside the bed. I didn't rush to hug her. I didn't offer any grand words of forgiveness. I just stood there, letting the silence fill the space between us. She reached out with one shaky hand, and I took it, not because I was ready to forgive her, but because I knew that sometimes a gesture was all you needed. "I never meant to hurt you," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know how much damage I'd done. I thought you would be fine." I squeezed her hand, the weight of her words settling into my chest. "I'm not fine, Mom, but I'm getting there. We're getting there. Oliver and we're okay." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I know now. I hope you can forgive me." I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if I could forgive her, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would change everything. What had happened was in the past, and no amount of apologies or explanations could rewrite it. Instead, I squeezed her hand again. "I'm not sure I can forgive you, but I'll try. I'll try for us." The moment was quiet, full of unspoken words, but in a way, it was enough. Because sometimes moving on doesn't require answers. It just requires letting go. Life can throw some unexpected curveballs, but the key is learning to roll with them, preferably with a strong cup of coffee in hand and your sense of humor intact. Whether you're dealing with family drama, personal growth, or just trying to find your way, remember, it's okay to walk away from toxic situations and take control of your own narrative. And speaking of taking control, if you're ready for more stories about overcoming life's challenges with a dash of sarcasm and wisdom, hit subscribe on the Revenge Protocol YouTube channel. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. Unless you're plotting revenge, then maybe just like instead.